there is a house unlike any other. A towering structure that has stood for over a century, overlooking the valley below like a silent witness to time itself. Its walls have absorbed decades of laughter, sorrow, and whispered secrets. To the outside world, it was simply an aging estate, an architectural relic of a bygone era. But those who step through its doors, they tell a different story. A story of doors locking on their own, of voices heard in the dead of night when no one was there, of shadows moving where no light should cast them. A place where time itself seems to stretch and twist, where the air grows thick with an unseen presence. Some claim it's just the house settling old wood groaning under the weight of age. But others insist something has never left. Records show that families once lived here, that it was filled with warmth and life. But there are gaps in its history, missing documents, unexplained sales, and long periods where no one dared to call it home. The few who did, they never stayed for long. Some left in the dead of night without a word. Some were found wandering miles away, confused, unable to remember how they got there. And some were never found at all. What is it about this place that drives people away? What did they see? What did they hear? More importantly, why does no one ever speak about what happened inside? The more you look, the more questions appear, and the deeper the mystery becomes. But behind the scenes, something darker was lurking. Something far more unsettling, or so it seemed. Tonight, we uncover the story of the house on the hill. Its past, its secrets, and the terrifying truths that may still be hidden within its walls. Stay with us, but be warned, once you step inside it's not so easy to leave. The story begins in the late 1800s, when the land was nothing more than rolling hills and dense forests. It was here, on a secluded stretch of land, that Edgar Whitmore decided to build his home, a grand estate unlike anything the town had ever seen. The construction was meticulous, every detail crafted with precision, as if the house was meant to last forever. Towering walls, intricate woodwork, hidden passages. Whitmore spared no expense. But there was something peculiar about the way it was built, something that didn't quite add up. Whitmore, a wealthy industrialist, was known for his sharp mind and his reclusive nature. He rarely mingled with the townsfolk, preferring to keep his affairs private. He traveled often, disappearing for weeks at a time, returning only with crates of books, artifacts, and objects no one could explain. Those who worked in the house claimed he was obsessed, poring over strange blueprints late into the night, scribbling notes in languages they didn't recognize. His study was off-limits, locked at all times, and rumors spread that beneath the house, there were tunnels. Rooms that didn't exist on any official plans. Places meant to stay hidden. For years Whitmore lived alone. The house was silent. But then, without warning, everything changed. A woman arrived, a young bride, Evelyn. No one knew where she came from, only that she rarely left the estate. Within a year she gave birth to twin sons, and for the first time, the great house was filled with life. The laughter of children echoed through its halls, music played late into the evening, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the house had become a home. But happiness in the Whitmore estate was fleeting. And soon, the laughter would be replaced by something else entirely. It began with whispers. Servants spoke in hushed voices of things being misplaced, of doors locking on their own, of a presence lingering just out of sight. They dismissed it at first, just the tricks of an old house settling, the wind pushing against the walls. But then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Late at night when no one was awake. The sounds of something moving through the halls, pausing just outside bedroom doors. And then one by one they began to leave. The butler first. Then the maids. Within months, no one remained but the family. The final entry in Evelyn Whitmore's journal was dated November 12, 1902. It read only 3 words, "We are not alone." The very next night, the Whitmore family vanished. Every single one of them. When neighbors noticed the house had gone silent, authorities were called. What they found inside was unsettling. The dining table was still set for dinner, chairs pulled out as if someone had just risen to leave. A fire burned low in the hearth, casting shadows on the walls. Upstairs, beds were unmade, blankets thrown aside as if someone had left in a hurry. But there was no sign of struggle. No broken locks. No footprints leading away from the house. It was as if they had simply disappeared. The official report stated that Edgar, Evelyn, and their children had likely left of their own accord. But those who stepped foot inside the house that night told a different story. They spoke of an overwhelming sense of dread, a suffocating silence that pressed against the walls. And then there was the study, the only room that was locked from the inside. When they forced the door open, they found Whitmore's desk covered in frantic, desperate writing. Pages filled with symbols. Drawings of figures standing in the corners of rooms. And one final message scrawled across the wall in deep gouges. They are inside the walls now. I hear them whisper my name. After that night, no one dared to enter the house again. It stood empty, a looming shadow on the hill. But the story of the Whitmore family was far from over. For nearly 2 decades the house remained abandoned. Over time, nature began to reclaim it. Vines crept up the stone walls, the roof sagged, windows cracked. But then, in 1925, the house was purchased by a new owner, a wealthy banker from out of state who had no knowledge of its past. He moved in with his wife and young daughter, eager to restore the estate to its former glory. It was meant to be a fresh start. Instead, it became something else entirely. From the very first night, things were off. The couple heard noises, strange tapping within the walls, muffled voices that stopped the moment they tried to listen closer. The daughter, just 6 years old, began speaking to someone only she could see. She called them the quiet ones. When asked where they were, she simply pointed to the corners of the room. Less than a year later, the family was gone. They left in the middle of the night, taking only what they could carry. The house was abandoned once more. And so it continued. Each new owner lasted less time than the last. In 1947, a family moved in and fled within 6 months. In 1973, a paranormal investigator, determined to debunk the stories, locked himself inside for a full week. By the time they found him, he was barely conscious, curled up in a corner of the study, whispering over and over, "It's awake now, it knows we're here." He never spoke of it again. In 1999, a journalist attempting to uncover the truth went missing. His car was found abandoned just outside the property, the driver's side door hanging open. Inside, his camera was still recording, capturing nothing but an empty hallway, and then, just before the tape cut to static, the sound of someone breathing. Over time, stories of the house took on a life of their own. Some claimed the Whitmore family never left, that their spirits lingered, trapped within its walls. Others spoke of something far older, something that had always been there, waiting. The thing in the attic, the shifting shadows, the door that never stays locked. Some even believed the house itself was alive, feeding off those who dared to enter. And the more people talked, the more they feared. Even now, few dare to approach it. The locals avoid the road leading up the hill, claiming the air grows heavier the closer you get. The trees seem to lean toward the house as if whispering warnings in the wind. Those who enter, if they return at all, never speak of what they saw. But perhaps the most unsettling rumor of all is this. No matter how long the house sits empty, no matter how much time passes, there is always, a light burning in the upstairs window. By the early 2000s, the house on the hill had become more than just an abandoned estate. It had become an obsession. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and skeptics alike were drawn to it, each hoping to uncover the truth. Some were armed with cameras and recording equipment, determined to capture evidence of what lurked within its walls. Others carried little more than their curiosity. Very few returned unchanged. One of the most well-documented investigations took place in 2007, when a research team from a well-known paranormal society decided to spend 72 hours inside the house. They set up infrared cameras, motion sensors, and EVP recorders. The first night was uneventful, only faint sounds, the occasional creak of old wood shifting in the cold. But then, just after 3 a.m., the static began. The cameras flickered, struggling to maintain focus. One by one, the equipment failed, batteries drained instantly, wires shorted out. And then, the whispering started. The lead investigator described it as a chorus of voices just beneath the threshold of hearing. No distinct words, just a murmur that filled the space around them. At first they assumed it was the wind. But when they played back the recordings, they heard something else. A voice, clear as day, cutting through the static. A single phrase repeated over and over, "Go back downstairs." They did. But what they found in the main hall made them wish they had never entered at all. The furniture, once covered in years of dust, had been moved. Chairs turned toward the staircase. The dining table set as if expecting guests. And then, just as they turned to leave, the grand chandelier above them swayed. Not from the wind. Not from any draft. But as if something, or someone, had brushed past it. The team left before sunrise. They refused to speak publicly about what had happened. But months later, one of the investigators, visibly shaken, sleep-deprived, admitted that after leaving the house, he began waking up at exactly 3 a.m. every night. Sometimes, he swore he could still hear the whispering. The house's legacy isn't just one of fear. It's one of loss. Over the years, people have gone missing, some briefly, some permanently. In 1982, a teenager who dared to spend the night as part of a local legend was found wandering the woods 3 days later, unable to remember how he got there. His nails were torn, his feet bare, his clothes covered in dust, as if he had been crawling through the tunnels beneath the house. Except, there were no known tunnels. None that had ever been documented. In 2015, a man investigating the property was seen entering through the front doors on security footage. He was never seen leaving. His car remained parked on the road for 2 days before authorities arrived. Inside, his camera was found near the staircase, lens cracked as if it had been dropped in a hurry. The last frame recorded before the device shut off? A darkened hallway, and something just barely visible in the doorway at the end? Then there was the woman in 2021, a filmmaker working on a documentary about the house. She had spoken to locals, gathered stories, and was set to begin filming inside. But the night before her scheduled visit, she called a friend in distress. She claimed she had been having dreams about the house, dreams where she was trapped, unable to find her way out. She said she felt watched, listened to. She canceled her plans and left town the next morning. She hasn't spoken about the house since. Now the house stands as it always has, weathered, imposing, waiting. The town has long since learned to ignore it, but still, it looms over them. A quiet reminder of something unresolved. Something unfinished? There are no official records explaining why the house remains unsold. No one is sure who truly owns it anymore. There are no renovation plans, no demolition orders. Just a structure that refuses to be erased. And the stories, they haven't stopped. Hikers passing nearby claim to hear faint voices carried on the wind. Lights are seen flickering in the upstairs windows, though no one has lived there for decades. And sometimes, if you listen closely at the gates, you might hear something else entirely, footsteps shuffling just beyond the threshold. As if someone, or something, is still inside. So what is the truth? Is it simply an old house with an unfortunate history? A structure falling apart under the weight of time? Or is there something more? A presence that lingers, unseen, waiting for its next visitor? Maybe we'll never know. Maybe the house on the hill will keep its secrets forever. But one thing is certain. Those who step inside never forget what they find. If you found this story intriguing, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We explore mysteries, hauntings, and the unknown, and there's so much more to uncover. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chilling story. Because sometimes, the most terrifying places are the ones hiding in plain sight.